Welcome to Bitcoin Aggregated. Today we've got a really special guest all the way from El Salvador. John, did you want to give a bit of an intro to yourself and what you're building and what you're working on?
Yeah, sure. My name's John. I'm originally from New York. I've been in El Salvador a little bit more than a year now. I really believe that El Salvador is the signal, right? What's happening here is so important because El Salvador is the first nation in the world to adopt Bitcoin. It is going to create an example. We get to decide whether that's a positive example or not, like what sort of example it creates. So I'm the founder of Mi Primer Bitcoin, which is a grassroots Bitcoin education nonprofit. So we are just focused on getting people off of zero, right? So our target demographic is Salvadorians who are new to the space, who are new to Bitcoin. So we have classes, we have meetups, we have one-day classes, we have 10-week diploma classes, but we're just focused on getting people off of zero here in El Salvador.
Awesome.
That was amazing.
I love
I also agree with that, though. It was actually last year's Adopting Bitcoin conference where Sergey, the CEO of BitRefill, actually made a point that, this is our first opportunity as Bitcoiners to get this right. We may not get everything right, but if we get a few things right and it actually catches on, then we've got a playbook for when it happens next time, whether it's another Central American country, whether it's Africa, wherever that may be. When we do get that opportunity, and it seems like it will happen again, we can look at El Salvador as the case study. What did we do well? What did we not do so well? What can we improve on? So the work you're doing, and I've been to El Salvador. It's an inspiring place. Both Kieran and I will be back there again in about 6 weeks or so. So I can't wait to see what's changed over the last 12 months, but we'll get into that later in the podcast.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, I'll share my screen. Can you guys see that okay?
It's just opening up. Yep, there we go.
Yeah.
Working. So really there's three things actually. So Bitcoin Magazine had a article talking about higher education institutions starting to embrace Bitcoin, which I thought was pretty pertinent, given our conversation today, and also the fact I've been working at we were just talking about it before we jumped into the podcast, trying to retroactively fit a quote unquote accredited blockchain course specifically into BTC. So keep coming back to the white paper and kind of building that out. But that's kind of been my journey for the last 6 months, trying to do that. It's cool to see that these guys had an article up about institutions actually embracing that, because I think for the last number of years, you look at, like in Australia, RMIT have been doing quote unquote blockchain courses, and there's a few smart contract courses and crypto courses, but nothing specifically Bitcoin. So much so that you read through some of the curriculum for these blockchain courses and they don't even mention the word Bitcoin. It's just like, what the hell? This is crazy.
This is where it all originated from.
Yeah.
Funny enough.
Yeah.
I'm curious, I haven't read that article, but which higher education institutions, like, were they spread around the world? Were they US based, or?
Let's have a look. I've completely forgotten.
Doesn't look like it says.
Yeah, no, don't think they actually say.
Professor Corrick Ray, wherever that guy's from. Oh, did I say Texas A&M? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an American thing. Bloody Texas. They seem to have everything, don't they?
They do. They do. I really want to go to Texas actually and check it out. But I mean, that being in the news, I suppose I thought was pretty pertinent. I don't know your take on that, John, and like the higher ed institutions getting into Bitcoin education specifically, and how that would sort of affect you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we support all efforts towards Bitcoin education, right? I think that education is the foundation, right? So like from that, we could build so many other things, right? But it starts with that base education. And I think what's really important for Bitcoin education is kind of like the pre-base to that, which is just financial literacy.
Oh yeah.
So we have this 10-week Bitcoin diploma course, and the first 2 weeks into the third week, we don't even talk about Bitcoin, right? It's just like the history of money, what is value, and how we arrived at this moment. And then once we need a base understanding of finance before we could really understand why Bitcoin is so valuable, why it's so important, why it's different, and why it's, why I believe that it's going to change the world, right? But education is the key to all of that. So if there's universities that are doing that, and of course, I don't know the education that's taking place at these universities. I hope that it's of a high quality, right? There's also a danger that something could be labeled as education, but they're really just, trying to sell us CBDCs or something like that.
Oh yeah, good point. Good point.
So, but assuming that it sticks to a high quality and really talks about the potential that Bitcoin has, then all education efforts are part of the same good that's I hope can transform the world.
Definitely. You actually answered some of my questions that I had there, but that's really cool. We'll come back to all that. The second thing I wanted to get into, and I think this is really pertinent to where you're at the moment in El Salvador. I don't know if you've seen this Rolling Stone article that just popped up. I was like, what a jerk. and I had a look, like this guy Daniel, it looks like he hasn't written for Rolling Stone before, so it's his first article with them. I was just like, wow, why would you pick doing something like this to kick off your career with them? It
Could be intentional as well, right?
Could be intentional, yeah.
If it cops too much heat, then we can just kind of push this Daniel guy to the side and act as if it never happened,
Yeah. Or maybe he's sort of trolling just to get clicks. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, it sort of went into it, and it's just like even the heading is just like, really, really, you're gonna do that? I saw a thing the other day, actually. I tweeted it. God, what was it called? Basically, when you see a question mark at the end of a heading like that on an article, it means it's basically BS, from the get-go. But there's terminology around it. Hang on, tweets and replies. Where am I?
Well, it's as if they're kind of shaping you up for what they want you to answer that question with. It's
totally,
a rhetorical
totally.
question, right? Will this be the first country to be bankrupted by crypto? Well, we know the answer is probably no, but they want you to think well, of course it is. Everyone's being bankrupted by crypto. I mean, look at Luna, look at Celsius, and what people often always fail to recognize is those things are crypto, and crypto is not Bitcoin. They are two separate things, but they often get basketed together in the same.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right.
And again, I know this is probably going to be my mantra tonight, but education is the key. So people who are well educated on what Bitcoin is, what crypto is, and all those things, they won't fall for that. But someone who doesn't know the difference between various types of cryptocurrencies, what Bitcoin is and what separates it, they're vulnerable to, they're vulnerable to messages, to different messages like here, but they're also vulnerable to scams, to someone who's like, hey, send me one and I'll send you two, that sort of thing. It's all, by the end of this, I'm probably going to be a broken record, but education is really the key to success.
100%. No, I'm with you all the way. Yeah, it's called Betteridge's Law of headlines. So basically, anytime you see a question mark at the end of a headline, like he has on here, the answer is no.
I like that.
I've tweeted it at the guy as well, so hopefully he enjoys that. But yeah, so just diving into this, they obviously say it's kind of failing, and they they say, there's a dictator who's forcing people to use Bitcoin and they don't want to, and they're not their human rights are getting violated and all this sort of nonsense. I haven't been in El Salvador. Both of you have. John, you're living there. Is any of that true whatsoever?
I mean, I think the problem with a lot of these articles are that they don't, I don't know this person. Possibly he's been to El Salvador. I have no idea, but probably not.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of like armchair experts here.
Well, he did have an
and-
El Salvador flag on his Twitter thing that I just noticed. So he either is El Salvadorian or has lived there or has family there or something, but I'm assuming as well.
Yeah. But I would say that most of the article, I wouldn't agree with it. I don't think that it lines up with the things that I've seen on the ground. So there was an issue. So I believe that these photos are from protests that are about a year ago. So when the Bitcoin law came into effect, September of last year, then there were some protests. September 15th is Independence Day here. So there was a large protest on September 15th, which wasn't necessarily about Bitcoin, but it was the week after. So there were a lot of like signs and a lot of messaging around Bitcoin because there was an association then with the government. Like Bitcoin is the government. If you don't like the government, then you don't like Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
And it's worth stating that the government is quite popular here. At Me Premier Bitcoin, we try to be apolitical, so I won't speak to whether this is a great government or a horrible government. Like this is the government that allowed Bitcoin to take place here, and we want to teach everyone, whoever they voted for in the last cycle, right? But the reality is that the government is very popular here, like wildly popular. That said, it's not 100%. There are people that don't like the government here, right? As is the case with any place. And especially when the law first went into effect, like September of last year, then people who didn't like the government automatically hated Bitcoin, right? Without knowing anything else about what was. They're like, I don't like the government. The government said that Bitcoin's good, therefore Bitcoin must be bad.
Yeah.
That's much less true now. There's some residual of that, but that's we've I think that we've headed in the right direction there to separate Bitcoin a little bit from politics.
Awesome. And I had sort of follow-up questions for El Salvador in general and sort of how it's helped people, but we might do that after this. The last thing I wanted to mention was the Hodlnaut case with Craig Wright. So I've done a bit of reading on it, so I kind of know a little bit like what's going on. Obviously, it's a defamation case, and Craig Wright's just pulling them out left, right, and center against people. Do either of you know much about the case or sort of how it's going, or I know we can contribute to actually the legal fund through BTC, which, and I've seen a lot of people have done that, which is really cool. But I mean, it's pretty important for these patent trolls to be sort of squashed out, I think, particularly with the BTC protocol, because it is an open protocol. And I did listen to a podcast, I think it was on Peter McCormick's podcast. He had some lawyers on, so legal team, talking about how they've been sort of battling people like Craig Wright in the courts, just taking it upon themselves to sort of do that for the last number of years. And I guess like none of us really think about that. It's just like, well, it's open source software, it's on GitHub, like why do we have to think about that? But there is these people that are actively trying to take ownership over it, and it's really interesting. But yeah, I don't know. Do you guys know much about the Hodlnaut case?
Just the big picture stuff.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, this has been going on and dragging on for a while now. It's funny to see the Bitcoiners' reaction throughout this kind of whole event, like when from when Craig was first trying to identify the real person behind the Twitter of Hodlnaut, to how everyone became I am Hodlnaut and everyone changed their profile pictures, and they're kind of doing similar things now again, changing their own names to Hodl or some variation of that. And obviously the donations thing, I think last time I looked, which was I think last week, they were at 60 Bitcoin. I would assume that they're more than that now, which is, that's not a small figure to
significant,
be essentially crowdsourced for legal defense. So it will be very interesting to see what happens with this. From what I have read, Hodl seems pretty confident that he's in a good position to be able to squash this in the courts. But yeah, this is Craig's. We were talking about this off camera before, and it seems like Craig's that kind of guy who you can never really nip in the butt. He'll always find a way to squirm and weasel out of a particular situation and find himself in the spotlight again. So hopefully this sets a precedence that this kind of stuff can't just go on. It's a bit of a circus show. So I don't know. This is not the only person he's tried it with. He's tried similar things with Peter McCormack. I know they had a recent case in Norway, I think. But there was also another one in the UK courts, I believe, as well. It's just a whole bunch of complication and web of nonsense that I think, for most people, especially individuals, Bitcoiners who are just regular Bitcoiners, can't necessarily fight these things. So it is good to see other Bitcoiners stand up for Hodl and help where they can through donations and whatever else.
Yeah, totally. I might put the link to that in the description for anyone who wants to contribute to that. Cool. All right. So I think that's enough for news stuff for today. Let's get into what you're working on, John. So I had a bunch of education questions. If we could sort of jump into them first, that's cool. But yeah, basically for the last since 2012, I've been teaching BTC in high school, and then in a primary school we actually built the world's first Bitcoin school out of shipping containers here or elementary school as you call it in America.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was really amazing. So we had a 21 Bitcoin donation from a guy who came out from America, from Chicago, and we built this amazing learning space that was completely student centric. So the kids all voted on how the funds were allocated, and we built these like 4 wicked learning spaces, like one for VR, one for podcasting and like a news desk sort of thing, one for makerspace, so like really good 3D printers and like a whole space dedicated to that, and then one for engineering specifically with like Satoshi's white paper up on the wall. So it was a really cool journey sort of building that, and then moving forward we wanted to take the stuff that we learned from building that space and keeping things sort of student centric. This is like, kids taking ownership of their learning, but also like learning about private keys and hardware wallets and how do I take ownership of we moved from BTC to using Dogecoin because I just lost so much money. Kids losing Bitcoin. I was so annoyed when Elon did the pump on Doge, because like, oh, it's so irritating because it's a really good learning tool where it doesn't matter if it goes missing or not. Like, and he kind of like took that away, so I found it irritating. But like specifically in the learning space, taking and I love the fact that you said financial literacy as the core element, as that's what we're looking at building with the School of Bitcoin. So if you check out the schoolofbitcoin.com, you can see the curriculum that we're doing it's a completely open source curriculum, and the only didactic thing, meaning sort of teacher driven, that we want to do for this decentralized autonomous education system that we're building is financial literacy as the core component, and having that be the thing that's consensus driven. So like meaning human consensus. So we all agree or get as close to truth as possible to what financial literacy means, because it means so much to so many different people. So we're in the process of building that out now. But I wanted to ask about your program and sort of how you're doing it. And I think that the first thing that really intrigued me was the diploma and how that works, and is it accredited, and is it part of I don't know how the education system works in El Salvador, but is there an accreditation process like with the government, and how that works with like registered trade organizations, and take us through that process if you can.
Yeah. So yeah, we're really happy with the diploma program. Just we started out in September with our first class, which was just an intro class, just these one-off classes, like a 90-minute class. And then in February of this year, then one of our early sponsors, which is Ibix Mercado, they invited us to. They had a connection already with a school in a suburb of San Salvador, which is the capital here, which is where I am now. They invited us to this meeting, a school that was just interested in pursuing Bitcoin education. Like the director of the school was very innovative and wanted to do something. And the way that this school is set up, that each student has to take a number of what's called diploma programs, which are these 10-week courses, like life skills or trade skills. It could be I don't know what all of them are, but say one of them I know is like bacon, for example, right? So that's one of the classes is just bacon, right? So you need 8 of these diplomas in order to graduate, and they wanted to add one for Bitcoin, which is what we developed then. So we developed the curriculum that was a meeting in late February, and then we started in April. So it's a bit of a time crunch, but yeah, so we developed this 10-week course for students there. So it's what we would call in the US as a high school. It's actually, I don't even know what we would call it in the US. It's not as common there, but it's actually it's a pretty wide range, but they come at different times of the day. What we teach is the final years, right? What I would think of as high school students. Yeah, so it's required. The school requires that the students take a certain number of diplomas. It doesn't have to be our diploma. They could take another diploma, right, from another subject. As it so happens, there's actually not a lot of diplomas at this school, so they kind of have to take all of them for the moment while they're building that out. So they do kind of have to take it. In terms of accreditation from the government, we let me try not to say anything I'm not supposed to. We have a good relationship with the government. The government is working on their own Bitcoin education programs for the public school system, which we hope to assist them with. There's a couple of things in the pipeline, which hopefully, I hope by the time you guys come here in November, then all that stuff is known. But there's a couple of things in the pipeline. The government is also excited to offer Bitcoin education to the population here, both in person and also virtually. And we're doing our best to help all education efforts, government included.
Very cool. Well, yeah, I'd love to help any way that I can with the stuff we've been building. So let's reconvene then and see what we can do.
Absolutely.
So in terms of like your delivery to the students, so it's equivalent of like year 11, year 12 students. Is that sort of the age group you're working with? Yeah.
Yeah, they're like 16, 17.
Okay.
More or less that age, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Man, I wish I was learning this stuff at 16, 17.
Right. Yeah, me too.
Lucky kids.
Yeah, I know. Seriously lucky. Yeah, so in terms of delivery, like take us through sort of how you're running them through intro to BTC, and then sort of the I guess learning about the network, learning about mining, learning about nodes. Are you doing all that sort of stuff as well? And is there a language barrier for learning that? I'm assuming yes, but how do you get around that?
So yeah. So let me clarify. I'm not a teacher. I don't teach any students here. The organization has grown quite a bit, and it's grown mostly because we've been fortunate to attract really talented Salvadorians to help with this effort, and those are the ones who are in the classrooms day in and day out, teaching the students. So everything's in Spanish, nothing is in English. So this is the visual aid here. This is the book, the workbook that we have for the 10 weeks. And so basically we view it as, again, we started out with these intro classes, which are just touch on everything, basically, like, what is money? Okay, now here's Bitcoin, the difference between centralization, decentralization, custodial, non-custodial, and download a wallet, and we're going to send you some sats, and you're going to send it to the next person, so they have some practical use with it, right? So the diploma program, which is 10 weeks, which we have in this first public high school, now we have a second one in Ataco. They're going to have their first graduating class on September 13th. And hopefully soon in many more places. So it's just an extension of that, right? So we just go more in depth. So it touches on a little bit of everything. We talk about Lightning, we talk about nodes, we talk about mining, we talk about the evolution of Bitcoin, halving, like the schedule that Bitcoin has, and then we talk about the future and specifically the future here in El Salvador, and why they should care, right? Why this is important, why this could affect them, because the vision is that today's students are tomorrow's teachers. Mm-hmm. And that's actually literally true. Sometimes many of our teachers were not in the diploma program, but they were students of ours in the intro class. And then, they went down the rabbit hole and they wanted to keep contributing. So we try to make that a part of all our classes, that, today's students are tomorrow's teachers.
Very cool. I think we're all students in some capacity as well. Even if you graduate theoretically to become a teacher, it's a never-ending learning experience when it comes to Bitcoin. I've known about it for 10 years, and I still feel like I'm scratching the surface sometimes. Right.
So yeah.
It's really cool and really impressive. I'd love to sit the course. It may be all information that I perhaps already know, but it would be a fun experience. However, my Spanish is horrible. I've been trying to learn since I came back from El Salvador last year, but it's really hard learning an additional language as an adult. Like, really wish I was taught Spanish as a kid, but I mean, I had no reason to. I was taught a different language as a kid. So it is what it is. But, hats off to what you've done. And I look forward to seeing it in the flesh in a couple of months. And I look forward to seeing what it looks like in 12 months' time again as well.
Yeah, for sure. We have ambitious plans. We have ambitious plans. As I said before, I think El Salvador is so important because it will be an example for the world. It is an example for the world, right? And it will be an example for the world. What happens here is going to echo. And our mission, our vision is to create a template for education in a country that is amendable to Bitcoin, that is accepting Bitcoin. And once we create that template, then that's the start. That's the start. Then after El Salvador, then it's Guatemala, Honduras, Panama. I mean, eventually Australia, right?
Yeah. We could use some serious Bitcoin education here.
and we should probably talk like after the show or in November. This isn't super soon, but we hope to create curriculum or work with others to create curriculum and then open source it in a variety of other languages, English probably being the second one. And in, not just that targeted in high school students, but businesses, senior citizens, preteens, whatever the various demographics or groups are, because this is this is the start of the journey, right? El Salvador is not the end of the story. This is much closer to the beginning than the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think regardless of who you are, be it an individual, a business, a government, a state actor, and regardless of whether you think El Salvador's crazy or you're really excited, everyone's watching. So it is vitally important that we take this opportunity, and people like yourself and all of the other great initiatives coming out of El Salvador. I've been a Bitcoiner for a long time, but coming back from El Salvador like really inspired me. Like I was not expecting that level of emotion. Like day one, right at the start of adopting Bitcoin last year, we had the guys from Bitcoin Beach up on stage, and they were crying on stage because of how important and how much it meant to them. And it was the first time I've ever seen a standing ovation given at a Bitcoin conference. And, it was moving, just moments like that. I was like, man, this is much bigger than number go up or any of the other nonsense that happens. I mean, it's all fun and games, Twitter, having on Twitter with all the memes and stuff, but there's actually really important work happening here. And that's why I said, I will go back as much as possible, as often as possible. Thankfully, I'll be back again this year, and hopefully that happens on a yearly basis for the unforeseeable future, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's so important that people see what's actually happening here, right? Because it's one thing, as I kind of mentioned with the article earlier, like it's one thing to hear about it, and there's so many different perspectives, and everyone has their own agenda, right? But I think as Bitcoiners, we really need to live by the ethos of all the ethos of Bitcoin, but including don't trust, verify, right? Like, what's happening here is so important, and I think it's hard to grasp that if you don't see it with your own eyes. I mean, obviously, that's not an opportunity that everyone will have. So I think we should do our best to document it with with words and pictures and videos and all that. But if you have the opportunity to see it with your own eyes, then it is absolutely worth doing. And adopting Bitcoin this November is a great excuse to come to El Salvador. Right?
It certainly is. I'll be presenting there as well, so it should be fun. The other thing I wanted to ask just about the students and the school and the infrastructure, like what in terms of internet connectivity and access to computers and hardware, how is that like for the students? Like what's the average access to connectivity and decent hardware?
Yeah, so that varies school to school, right? So we teach in a variety of places, but just to focus on the Bitcoin diploma, which we have in 2 schools. One school, the school policy is so in both schools we've helped upgrade their internet, right? That's like kind of part of the package is
Awesome.
we see the Bitcoin diploma as an anchor, right? That's like the centerpiece of a larger mission, a larger ambition in the community. So the students that take the 10-week diploma are the core of that. But we also teach community classes, which are targeted at the teachers of the school, the parents of the students, and just people that live in the area, like neighbors. Really, it's not limited to anyone, but those are kind of the groups that we're targeting. And that's just intro classes, right? We can't teach a 10-week course to everyone, right? That's just for the high school students. But in addition to, so we upgrade the internet there at both of the schools. There's a pretty big difference. This is a pretty big contrast. And this probably, even though it's a small sample size of 2 schools, it probably shows the two possibilities. In one, it's just a school policy that the students can't have cell phones there. It's a distraction, whatever. So that's a little bit of a challenge for us. We actually have cell phones that we take in when we do the unit where we talk about transactions and wallets and all that. So we're able to give cell phones to students to use just for that class. And then the other school that we work at, they don't have that policy, so the students use their own phones. And they're between classes, they're like sending messages or whatever, so they're pretty well connected. Besides that, the government of El Salvador has a program to give a laptop to every public school student in the country. I think every student in the country. I believe it's every student in the country. I think.
Wow. Cool.
Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure about private schools, but at least for every public school student. And that doesn't happen all at once. So I think they're probably still in the process of distributing that. But yeah, I've seen it. It's like a again, don't quote me on these details, but it's like a Chromebook, right? It's like a basic laptop that they give the students that they're able to use in the school. And they could use programs that are on it for like graphic design or whatever the class is. But then it's theirs, right? They take it home with them, so they can continue to work on it there.
That's fantastic. That's really good to hear. What about in terms of access to like Raspberry Pis? Because I know that there's a shortage across the world at the moment.
They're hard to get here.
Yeah.
So that's hard to get, and things like hardware wallets are hard to get. El Salvador is, on the one hand, I think people underestimate how good cell phone coverage is here. There's actually, per capita, more Salvadorians have a cell phone than Americans.
Yeah.
Right? Per capita, it's higher in El Salvador than the United States.
Yeah.
So there's people have cell phones here, right? Not 100%, right? And the number is kind of skewed by people that have like multiple cell phones, right?
Yeah.
But that's not really an issue. And again, it depends on place. Like in the countryside, that's more of an issue than the capital, right? But generally, that's I think people from outside underestimate how many cell phones are here. What people might also underestimate is the difficulty of getting certain materials here, right? So the shipping infrastructure is not very good. We've had a number of companies have donated like hardware wallets to us, right? And we are so thankful. That's so wonderful. But it's not a very smooth process, right? Like it takes a while to get here, and then we have to pay crazy import taxes on it.
Okay.
And it's so. There's actually a service here that there's a pretty strong connection between El Salvador and the United States, which is kind of a historical thing. One, we're pretty close, but two, there's a historical context to that there was a civil war here. For the most part in the decade of the 80s, I think in 92 is when the peace accords were. And because of that, a lot of people left the country, right? There's a lot of people that left. And so it's extremely common to have a cousin or an aunt or an uncle or whatever in the United States. So there's a pretty strong connection between El Salvador and the United States. And there's a lot of travel between the two, that have family in both places, that visit family in the other. So there's in fact like a service here where you're going to the US and somebody wants something from the US, like a Raspberry Pi, for example, right? And they could essentially like put an order in, and there's an app that you could pick up that order and you get paid to take that on your plane with you and like deliver it to this person.
Geez, that's pretty cool.
In a weird way, that's probably easier than like UPS or DHL or any of those things.
Well, that made me think. I might have to bring one of the other businesses. The thing that first kind of got me started professionally in this space is starting a hardware wallet company here in Australia, the first of its kind. Wow. We stock a bunch of different hardware wallets. as you would imagine. So perhaps I'll have to bring a little bit of a bag over, so I can personally deliver it to you, and it can be used for the program and for the kids and
Absolutely.
the students.
Maybe see if we can
Absolutely.
get some pies to bring with us as well. I reckon that'd be really
Well,
good.
they're hard to even get in Australia as well. I had to go all the way to Sweden to get a pie. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's a bit
I
of a
think
worldwide problem.
I think the Pi 3s we can probably get our hands on in Australia, so I might look into that before we come, because I think it's really important. I think it's a really important aspect of the learning is actually building
Yeah.
a node, and like you learn a lot from doing that. And I think it's something that gets overlooked a lot, but I think it's something worthwhile doing. Just going back, John, to the phone situation with the two schools, I find that really fascinating, because we had something similar in Australia where like you said, like our school was using phones all the time because it's a learning tool. It's not a distraction device. Like it's something you can actually learn with, and you can do stuff with a phone that you can't do with a laptop or a desktop. And there's a lot of cool aspects to that. And we actually had a ban across Victoria, so it's the whole state, for schools like using phones. And there was so many people going, "Oh, that's fantastic! Now the kids will stop, being distracted." I'm like, "Wow, they can't see the forest for the trees, and it's a learning device, right?" What's the difference between the two schools that you've noticed? So, like in terms of the connectivity in one and the not being allowed to use the devices in the other, have you noticed much of a difference with the students?
Uh, no, again, I'm not really, so I'm not a teacher, so I'm not at these schools
Or on the
on a
ground?
regular
Okay, yeah,
basis.
yeah.
It's hard for me to give like an expert insight into that.
That's all right. It'd be fascinating to see. It's a good case study for sure. Um,
Yeah.
the last thing I just wanted to ask is for the like sort of around student centric learning for the schools. Is there do you know of a problem based learning program or a project based learning program that's happening within the schools at all?
You mean with anything, not just with Bitcoin
Or
or
just, well, I mean, Bitcoin sort of specifically, but with anything in general, are they sort of going down that path? Is that a thing?
some aware of the government kind of how can I phrase this? Like exploring a variety of different options for Bitcoin education.
Yep.
Uh, so and there's I'm sure there's probably things that I'm not aware of, things that are some balls in the air that I'm not familiar with. But kind of similar to what we're doing in kind of an add-on, but also to kind of splice up Bitcoin learning into a variety of different subjects, and then virtual courses that students would not have a physical teacher, but to learn virtually. Um, so I anticipate, so the school year runs here more or less with the calendar year. So the school year ends in November,
Yep.
and then it starts back up again in January. January is when the new grade starts. So I anticipate that there's going to be a lot more what I'll call official education efforts uh, next year.
Cool. So like just the last thing on the education aspect. What we're looking at building with the School of Bitcoin is what we're calling a DAIS, so a decentralized autonomous education system with financial literacy as the core piece, feeding into a network of people that can facilitate problem-based learning. So the concept is basically, okay, now you're financially literate. What problem do you want to solve? And then we can build a project from that. We have a team of people to sort of help scaffold around that. So the idea is basically to create a system that kind of runs itself, so like a circular economy of learning, basically. So running on BTC, so the students would put in, or the learners, we say no teachers, no students, because they're all learners together. The learners put in an application for whatever they want to build. So that could be, feeding homeless people, or I want to build this, whatever it is, whatever project it is. I want to build a school, all the way up to that. It could be absolutely anything. Put an application in, and then by consensus sort of gets voted in, whether yay or nay they get funded for that project. Could be starting a blog or anything sort of small. So I think having that as the base, like if you ever speak to students in here, how excited they get about problem-based learning. So like what social problems are important to you and how do you want to fix them? The kids come up with all sorts of crazy ideas and it's awesome to see. So I think using BTC to sort of facilitate that is kind of the way forward. So they get excited about the currency and then, how do we use this for stuff that's
Yeah.
important to me?
Yeah, the students, I mean, that demographic is just so key because they're open-minded, right? They're open-minded in a way that not all of us are.
Brainwash.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like we become entrenched in this financial system, right? So it's like, in order to understand Bitcoin, we have to unlearn some things. But if you're starting out, then you don't, and you're just open to it. So it's like, if you own a house, you have this incredible self-interest in the housing market going up, right? You're not an unbiased player in that, right? And that's just an example. Like once you enter the system, once you become part of the status quo, then you have a vested interest in its continuation.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the status quo doesn't necessarily benefit you, right? Even this isn't just for rich people. This isn't just for powerful people. This is for everyone, right? Everyone that is involved in that is part of the system wants it to continue, right? They have a vested interest in that because the greatest fear is the fear of the unknown, right? So that demographic right before they leave high school is just the perfect age because they're open to new possibilities, right? They're intelligent enough to understand these concepts, but they're not entrenched to dismiss them, right? So it's like this perfect like in between place. So we do teach everyone. Bitcoin is for everyone, right? This is like, we have a variety of programs. We like the majority of our students, we teach a few hundred up to 800 students a month. The majority of them are not in the diploma program. They just take like intro classes or we have some a variety of other classes. We have, how many diploma students do we have now? Less than 200, between 1 and 200, 140 or so. I don't know, between 1 and 200. But we have, 4 times as many that take intro classes every month, right?
Fantastic.
And that's all ages. That's like, they could be 16-year-old or 17-year-old, but they could be 60 or 70 too, right?
Any younger?
Yeah.
Any like primary school, elementary school students?
I mean, we've had, I don't know if we could count this as a student, but we've had mothers bring their infants to class.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, we've had as young as like 3 months.
Very good.
It's never too early to start stacking and start learning about Bitcoin, I guess. But yeah, they probably need to know a few other skills prior to that. Some prerequisites like talking.
Mostly, yeah. Yeah, well, they're getting an early start, so
Yeah. Being mindful of your time, John, thank you very much for taking your time to speak with us today. I know there's a bit of a time difference between the deserted island in the middle of the ocean that is Australia and the rest of the world.
And everywhere else, yeah.
And everywhere else. Yeah, it's really horrible. But I just wanted to quickly change tune to a bit more generalized Bitcoin and El Salvadorian kind of news and trends and stuff like that. So, I mean, obviously it's been roughly 12 months, I think just a little over 12 months since the law came into effect. We all have our, like you said, our opinions from sitting on the sidelines, and for some of us who have been there, but you, who is obviously well ingrained in the local ecosystem. What sort of trends or learnings have you seen over that first 12 months of El Salvadorians going through their Bitcoin journey?
Yeah, so there's definitely been progress. There's been a lot of progress, and I should note that my context is mostly San Salvador. That's where I live. That's the capital. It's the largest city. Obviously, I've been to El Sante, Bitcoin Beach, and I've been to a bunch of other places in the country, but this is where I live. This is like where most of my experience is. There's been a lot of progress. San Salvador 1 year ago today, there was very nearly zero Bitcoin adoption. And there's still a lot of work to do. And I don't want people to think that, mission accomplished here, right? Like we are closer to the start than the end of this, right? There's so much more work to do. But I would say that my very rough estimate is that 10% of the population here is a user of Bitcoin, like an active user, not like they used it once, but they use it, say, once a month, right? And I think some people might think that that's low, but it's actually quite high to go from 0 to 10. 10 is to get off of 0 is the hardest thing, right? So 1 out of 10 people are active users of Bitcoin here. Like they use it once a month, they understand it. Well, that's is huge. That's massive in 1 year. So if we keep that trend up, it's not going to be 10% every year. It's going to be 20% next year and 30 to bring us to 30, and then 30%, and then it's like game over once we get to more than half of the population. So there has been a lot of progress with that. I just bought today. I bought something at a chain, I don't know, like bakery dessert place. It's called Chaw's, and it was such a smooth experience. There's different systems for POS systems here, and some are better than others. And it was just such a smooth experience. I loved it, and I was talking with the cashier, like, oh my gosh, that was so great. I'm so happy that that's so easy. And she's like, yeah, it wasn't like that before, but it's so easy. We all get it, So just the technology has progressed as well, because I think El Salvador is kind of like a testing ground for Lightning, right? That's basically what everybody uses. People don't. I personally basically never use on chain, right?
Wow.
We pay all of our expenses, we only use Bitcoin, right? Like we believe in a circular economy, so we want to walk the walk too. So we literally only use Bitcoin.
Amazing.
Which means that sometimes we have higher costs. We pay salaries. We have some full-time staff that we pay them.
Can I just interject? So not only do you only use BTC, but you only use Lightning, and you've only used Lightning since you've been there. Is that correct?
So for larger stuff, like we might have a larger bill with a lawyer or something like that.
Yeah.
Then we'll do on chain, but for the most part, then we use Lightning.
So cool.
Sorry, John, continue.
We make hundreds of Lightning transactions every day.
Amazing.
Wow.
That's just a normal day. That's not like anything.
That's what you can do when you live in the world of Bitcoin. It literally took me going to El Salvador to use Lightning for the first time.
Yeah,
so I was actually, I was a Lightning skeptic until El Salvador,
wow.
I heard that. Guilty.
Until I heard the announcement in June of last year. Like I had heard about Lightning, but I didn't really have a use for it in my everyday life. And then I heard about El Salvador, and I was like, Lightning must be further along than I thought it was. And I used it, and I was like, oh yeah, this is easy. Easy. Wow. Even with that, in this past year, just the infrastructure of Lightning, just how the various POS systems have, I think, universally improved, right? Like all of them are just better now than they were a year ago. So that's really helpful, a better user experience, easier user experience. And again, the politics have changed. There was a very strong association with Bitcoin and the government a year ago. There's some residual with that, but it's not that strong anymore. People have separated, you know, the government supports this, but that's not the same thing as it being interchangeable with the government, right? Which was something that a perception that some people had in the beginning, which you know, again, the government's very popular, so there might even, you could even argue that there's like a positive aspect to that. But to really understand Bitcoin, it's to understand that it involves the separation of money and state, right? So that just means that there's like a basic misunderstanding.
Oh, I've got so many questions for you, John, and we're going to obviously talk. We're going to talk for hours in November about all of this stuff, and I'm really looking forward to meeting you.
Yeah, me too, man.
I just had two more quick questions, but you know, keep them short in your response. But so I know when like Bitcoin first came out, it was all Chivo. You know, that was the wallet of choice for the most people. They gave away free Bitcoin to kind of bootstrap it all. Have you seen any differences in trends with people using alternative Lightning-based wallets and not perhaps Chivo? And also, I guess, sub-question, has Chivo improved?
Yeah, so I'll go in the reverse order. Chivo I would include in you know, as a point of sale system. It's a wallet, it's not just a point of sale, but it's also a point of sale. And I would include that in that they've all improved, right? Chivo was pretty buggy in the beginning. There were a lot
Welcome to software.
Yeah, a lot to be desired. It certainly has improved quite a bit. There's still room for improvement, but you know, it's trending in the right direction. And then in terms of other wallets, yeah, I think that other wallets have gotten more traction with time. In the beginning, it was very much, well, Bitcoin Beach Wallet existed before Chivo, right? So that was,
yeah,
the share of Bitcoin Beach Wallet was quite high before Chivo, right? But even Bitcoin Beach Wallet, they had a recent update, so that's improved. I mean, they've all improved, and there are more people that use other wallets, not just Chivo, which I think is really important, right? Like, it's important that people understand custodial, non-custodial, the pros and cons of each, right? That it's not just, this is the only way you could use Bitcoin, right? This maybe is the way that you want to use Bitcoin. But I think it's really important that people come to that decision after they know what the options are, right? And probably people, you know, Chivo, because it connects with your bank account, might be good for some uses, and something, you know, non-custodial, say like a Moon wallet, might be good for other ones, right? Where you don't want to have KYC and you don't want to have like hoops to jump through. So other wallets have I think they've become more popular as well. They've kind of gotten a little bit more market share than they did in the beginning. Chivo is still the most popular one. Like there's not much doubt. You know, more people have Chivo than any other wallet, but Bitcoin Beach Wallet, you know, which predates Chivo here, and then Moon and Wallet of Satoshi are popular, and also Strike has a pretty aggressive marketing campaign where you get discounts in different businesses if you've used, I mean, it's really just if you use Bitcoin, but they have their brand behind these marketing campaigns. So I think that's helped a lot of people, or encouraged a lot of people to download Strike. So I think you know, there's a lot of people with Strike Wallet now as well. A lot of people have more than one wallet, right? And there's others too. Those are just the ones that I, in my personal experience, that I see the most.
Okay, that's an interesting insight. I guess a wise man once told me education is key. So I think as long as the education continues, people will start to ask these questions. What is non-custodial? What is custodial? What is the differences? Why do they matter? What's better for my, like you said, what's better for my personal use case? So I guess, all the work that you're doing is helping bridge that gap in the knowledge.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, we try to be impartial, right? We believe that not only is education key, but impartial education is key, right? So we don't say, use this wallet, don't use that one, right? We say, this is what this wallet does. This is what custodial means. This is what non-custodial means. This is decentralization. This is centralization, right? I think it's really important to not dictate to students, right? Because one of the great things about Bitcoin is it incentivizes and encourages us to make our own decisions. And we need to live that, right? We need to be that example here.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's actually well said. I'm
Raj,
going to leave it
one more
there.
question?
I know Kieran's probably got something that's burning.
One last one. So everybody, so I did an announcement at my course. So I'm doing a TAE course at the moment, and that's where I'm sort of learning how to write that accredited course for blockchain, but for BTC really. And we had to talk about what our bucket list to the group. My top thing was going to El Salvador, and the shocked looks I got on people's faces from the group. They're like, "What? You'll get murdered there?" And I'm like, "No, it's not like that anymore. It's kind of different." Can you speak? And everyone I've said that to, told them I'm going to El Salvador, they're like, "Oh my god, that place is scary. You can get, kidnapped or whatever." Can you put all their fears to rest?
Yeah, absolutely. This is El Salvador. I mean, there is no place that is perfect, right? It's not like no one's ever been robbed here in El Salvador, right? But this is a
or in
relatively
Australia for that matter.
Yeah. I mean, I walk around, I walk home from an event or from dinner or whatever at night by myself, no problem. This is not perfect, but this is a safe country. They shouldn't be concerned with that. I think, and again, this goes back to seeing is believing. Don't trust, verify. There's a concept with media called mean world syndrome. I don't know if you've heard of that, but what that means is that media, there's a phrase in media: if it leads, it bleeds, right? So sensationalism and violence sells. That's the world that we live in, right? That's what gets clicks. So a place like El Salvador, in a place like Australia, is going to come up in the news maybe once a year. The average person in Australia will hear about El Salvador. And what are they going to hear about? A nice day where everything goes right? They're going to hear about the worst thing that happens that entire year, right? And then that creates a sense that's normal, right? That's not some totally out of bounds thing. So mean world syndrome says that the more you view the world through the lens of media rather than through your own eyes, the worse you think the world is. Right? We have to go out and I'm a big advocate of if I'm not pitching Bitcoin education, then I think for those that can, just travel is important too, for the same reason. You go to a place and you're like, people are nice here. Things are good. Which is true in most of the world, right? But that maybe isn't the perception that we have until we see it ourselves.
100%. It's so true. There used to be a bunch of articles. You probably remember, Chris, of the Apex gang in Victoria. I don't know if you remember them. It was it was front page news. Anyway, my primary school was on Apex Street where the gang is, and it's pretty low socioeconomic area, and whatever. school was pretty cool, and this is where we built the BTC school, like in the heart of that. So it's like, you know, giving kids who wouldn't necessarily have all the opportunities, like a leg up, like beyond everybody else, sort of thing. But I remember like reading on the front page, like the Apex gang, you know, killing people and blah blah blah. And I'm like looking at that on my phone, and then I'm like sitting in Apex Street, and there's like birds chirping, and the sun's out. I was just like, hang on, there's a disconnect here. So no, yeah, 100% right. Thank you so much, John. This has been awesome. I could literally speak to you all day, but let's let you go to sleep, I suppose. It's probably late there now. But yeah, thank you very much, and really looking forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, thank you. And let's definitely chat offline and see how we could work together. It sounds like you guys are up to some really cool stuff.
Awesome.
And you know, stronger together. We all want the same thing at the end of the day, right? Like Bitcoin to change the world for the better. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys in November.
Awesome.
Thanks, John.
Again.
Really appreciate it.
Talk soon.
Yeah. Bye.